The Complaints and Compliance Committee had the complaint lodged by the following complainants, which is the Media Monitoring Project Benefit Trust, SOS, which is Support Public Broadcast Coalition, and Freedom of Expression Institute. And just under a couple of days later, the SABC made its finding regarding the complaint. And then on 11th July 2016, the ICASA issued a media statement endorsing the recommendations by the SABC. What was the crux of the SABC recommendation and ICASA's decision? There was a decision A, which we call it at ICASA, which directed the SABC to withdraw its resolution as published in its statement of 26 May 2016, which states the following: the SABC will no longer broadcast footage of destruction of public property during protest. Then decision B, the withdrawal must be retrospective from the date when the resolution was taken, which is on 26 May 2016. Decision C, the chairperson of the board of the SABC must confirm in writing to council of the authority via the office of the coordinator of the SABC within 7 calendar days from the date on which the order is served that the resolution as endorsed by council of the authority was taken as ordered. Then on 20 July 2016, the SABC confirmed to the authority that it has considered the authority's decision and would abide by it. Following various communications from the authority requesting the SABC to publicly withdraw its 26 May 2016 resolution and provide proof that the resolution has indeed been withdrawn in line with decision C that was on the previous page, the SABC, to our surprise, informed the authority that it had never canned any material or footage. Why this is important, during the SABC hearings, which I forgot to state at the beginning, I'm the councillor that sits in the SABC. At no particular point was this matter raised at the SABC hearing. It was raised only when the compliance division of ICASA followed up with the SABC that the SABC has never canned any material or footage in that respect. So it came for the first time to our knowledge. As of to date, the SABC has never provided any proof of the withdrawal of the 26 May 2016 resolution in line with decision C, but instead has repeatedly informed and advised the authority that it had not implemented the 26 May 2016 resolution. Now, as you can imagine, the authority was faced with a dilemma that here is an entity that has advised that it will abide by its decision. And I must add to say that was done by its attorneys because we communicated through the attorneys. And then later on, we were informed that the SABC, has never actually canned any programming. So we're faced with that. So as the authority then, with this toing and froing, what we did, we decided to look at enforcement of the actual decision. We took the following enforcement measures. We actually communicated with the attorneys of the SABC 8 employees who had filed a constitutional court application on the matter against the SABC, requesting if they had any information from his client, that is the attorney, on any further encroachment by the SABC. The attorney responded to inform the authority that none of the SABC employees have received any formal notification that the protest policy was withdrawn. As you will recall, the protest policy was done in a public fashion. Therefore, you would presume that it would be, as an employee, that's why the question was raised, that it would be said again in a public notification. And then they informed the authority that a culture of censorship and fear continues in the SABC newsroom. Then the second part that we did, we also communicated with the parties that filed the original complaint, which is the SOS, Freedom of Expression, Media Monitoring Africa, and requested them, because they were the original complainants, if they have any information on continued encroachment or non-compliance by the SABC. The parties at the time of writing this, preparing this presentation, that is freedom of expression and the rest, that they will need some time to collate the relevant information and will respond in due course. I've been advised that this information was made available and the authority is still studying. It was made available today. And then I illustrated earlier that the ICASA had written a number of times. We cannot, at this point, if the committee so pleases, we can share the information with the committee because it has personal details of employees of ICASA and that of the SABC and that of the attorneys on record. We can share that information when we're making letters, writing letters of demands, emails, and we do not want to infringe on any person's personal rights, but we will make that information available should the committee pleases, because we saw in the letter. So what we've done, because SABC has failed to demonstrate compliance in line with the order and has not provided the board resolution to this effect in line with decision C, because the SABC has failed to comply with the decision contemplated in Section 17E of the ICASA Act. The ICASA, as of last week, on the 29th, we laid criminal charges against the SABC. I know it's not here, and we've laid those with the South African Police Services in Bramley. And we are dealing with that. The COO, if there are questions, we can speak to that. And we even have a case number in that respect. Besides that, that is the end of the presentation. I do not know if there's anything the committee would like to ask us. Thank you, Chair.
Before we do that, are there any additions from your side? Any additions whatsoever? No? Thank you very much for a very succinct and to the point presentation. Members, there you have it. Let's open it up for engagement. Let me start at the far end this time. Honorable Mokoena. And then we'll go to Honorable Van Dam. Did you indicate? Singh. Khoza. Loliwe. Chauke. And Killian. And again, once again, we'll take, when we see the amount, we might stop, let them answer and get the rest to go on, but we'll go as questions are asked. Honorable Mokoena.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to ask on one small matter. In terms of ICASA, how do you deal with, what is the modus operandi? Do you only deal with cases that people come forward to you to deal with? Or are you proactive in other cases that you then find out yourselves? The reason being that it was in the news, I think last year sometime, where one of the board members, I think we're going to be interviewing him a little bit later in the process, was complaining that the SABC board had taken a resolution not to broadcast any material showing certain political parties. And it was a resolution that was taken by the board and executed for a certain period of time. The reason why I'm asking is because it's in direct contradiction with the Broadcast Act, and I suppose some of the guidelines for the SABC in particular. Yeah, so my question is, one, did you receive a complaint of that nature? And if not, how does ICASA deal with such situations? I'm asking for purposes of this inquiry, but also I think it's interesting for the committee work as well. Thanks.
Thank you very, excuse me. Thank you very much, sir. Ma'am Van Dam.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to firstly say congratulations to ICASA for finally taking action against the SABC. I know we gave you, I and other members of the committee gave you a hard time for not following up on that. So I'm very pleased that you've taken strong action against the SABC in this regard and really fulfilling your duty as is described in the Constitution. My question has to do around the approval of the 90% local content decision for the SABC for radio and TV. Can you just talk us through, as a committee, how that decision was made? Was there any research put in front of you which looked into, considered drops in listenership and viewership on SABC TV radio stations and TV stations? Was a drop in advertising revenue considered? Was the fact that the SABC owes millions and millions of royalties to local artists considered? So I just want to know what the thought process was and what information you had in front of you in order to make this decision. The other reason I'm asking this is that Mr. Motsoneng is on record saying that, and allow me to quote, that he's said to have said that the 90% local content decision was taken in 10 minutes during an SABC executive committee meeting. He has said, I quote, "I said by 12 midnight local music should be played. They asked me how, and I said it was not my business. And for the first time in my life, I switched off my cell phone that day. The 90% was in the interest of the public and not the SABC ExCo." So he basically said he decided one day and that was it. So I just want to, for us as a committee to be let know, how was the decision made? Was it a decision that Mr. Motsoneng made on his own, or were you taken into confidence? And when you made your decision, did you consider all these things? Advertising revenue, viewership, listenership, and then royalty payments. Were all those factors considered? I thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Mr. Singh?
Thank you very much. I just want to follow on Honorable Van Dam and ask a direct question. Is there a need, or was there a need for ICASA to have been consulted and approval sought on the 9010? And one also notes, Chair, that one of the documents that you mentioned earlier on that was not made available to us because they say they don't have a document is a policy on 9010. And that is why I asserted earlier on that somebody must have just woke up one night, and that's what you say. Van Dam said 10 minutes at midnight and said, well, it's going to be 9010, without giving due consideration to public participation and other processes that should have been followed. Because one of the things I note here in terms of the license, the mandate they have, is that they must cater for minority groups, etc., etc. And I know there's a lot of discontent among certain groups of people that the 9010 cannot be a one-size-fits-all for all radio stations. So I'd just like your comment on that. And is that decision that they've taken ultra vires? Thank you.
Just to add to that one, so that we don't come back to it, and to correct Mr. Singh, it was not the document is not available. The reason for not providing it was because disclosure may negatively impact on the SABC's commercial interest. So you need to comment on that if you've got a comment on that one. Let's then take Ma'am Khosa.
Thank you, Chair. My immediate reaction to your presentation, and I don't sit in the Communications Committee, I just realized that we actually seem to be having a state of paralysis. And what I want to find out from you is that in terms of the act, a person convicted of an offense is liable to a fine not exceeding 1 million rands, now, or imprisonment not exceeding 1 year. Now, what I need to find out from you, we've heard earlier on that there appears to be a serious problem with consequence management in that institution. Now, I wanted to know whether you've explored the possibility of identifying individuals within the institution, because it's well and good to say you're going to find an institution and 1 million rands in their budget is not gonna hit hard. But have you considered getting an individual who is, found to be liable for that, or your mandate only confines you to the institution? And I'm not sure if it actually speaks to the key individuals within the institution. The other thing regarding that distraction, the SABC decision not to broadcast violent protests or whatever, okay? Now, what I want to find out from you is what process was followed when they took that decision. Obviously, I would expect that you would have engaged with them. When you received the complaint, they would have come to you and they would have advanced certain arguments and they would have said to you, this is the research that we have conducted, and we found that, there is an adverse effect on the members of society in terms of encouraging, violence or whatever. Because that seems to be the argument that they are making here when you in your overview, because obviously this is not in detail. Now, I want to know whether were you afforded the information that gives you the information that informs that kind of decision, and what sort of decision-making processes, especially in matters that affect the members of the public, because remember, this is a public broadcaster. So if there is a decision like that, you expect that there ought to be some kind of process that involves the members of the public, so that they can comment and say, well, we agree with this or we don't agree with it. And again, it goes back to the whole decision-making process of the institution itself. Is there a plan that you know of that probably outlines the decision-making process, as given the fact that it is a public institution and it's therefore expected to consult when it takes its own decisions? And finally, I wanted to know whether you've ever received a complaint about the sale of SABC archives. Because to me, that speaks to the heritage of the country. That speaks to the education aspect, which you've identified in your key five focus areas. And to me, that issue can't just be left like that without ICASA taking it up or even probing. Probably it goes back to what Honorable Singh was saying, I think it was Honorable Mukwena, whether you wait for people to complain, or as ICASA, you are also able, through your risk assessment, whatever strategies, able to identify the potential risk areas and say, no, at this point, we need not necessarily wait for the members of the public, but we can we can be proactive and say, SABC, let's engage on this. These are the areas that we are concerned about. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm so sorry I took long.
No, not at all, no problem. Could we have Honorable Loliwe?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I'm covered by my colleagues on other areas, except to ask ICASA. You said you are instituting charges now based on decision C, which is contained in your slide 11. The time frame there is 7 days. Why did you wait 3 months to act on something that was not implemented within 7 days?
Thank you so much. Could we then move on to Honorable Chauke?
Thank you very much, Chair. The Honorable Makosi Khoza has sort of covered the area of authority. Obviously, my question will be around decision-making at SABC. In your investigation or in your engagement with the SABC, can you share with this committee what have you identified with regard to authority, accountability line, starting with decision-making from the board, moving down to the executive authority. Maybe it's important that you sort of share that with us. Maybe the details of the case itself. What is it that you have opened? What kind of a case have you opened? For the sake of the reporting purpose that we'll have to do, maybe even where this case was open, and what do we expect out of this case if there's a failure from the SABC to comply. Now, on the issues of cost again, because this involves money, and the money that is involved is public money, state money. Maybe you can share with us at the level of ICASA how much you have spent so much on legal cost to deal with this case. And that's the same case of question that again will go to SABC to want to know how much is costing SABC to defend or whatever that they are doing currently, because it's not clear that they are abiding by the decision or what. So I think it's important that you sort of share that part with us. And then, Chair, yeah, for now, those are my points for now, Chair. I'll come back maybe if I'm...
Ngiyabulisa Baba. Honorable Killer.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I'm partially covered, but I would like to probe a little further. If we go back into the documentation that we are provided with, there was a complaint that was lodged, and it was good that the CCC, in fact, within a period of a month, sat and came to a conclusion and presented its findings to ICASA, the board, and they, or the council, and they in fact adopted it. My concern is just to what extent during the inquiry did you ever see any, did you ever see any board decision that was taken? Obviously, some of the members asked what processes preceded that decision and what evidence was presented before that decision was made. So clearly, just to follow the process that the SABC followed, because the Act is very clear. If the SABC wants to amend any of its policies, there are specific processes. And in terms of Section 6, which is the Charter of the Corporation, it is ICASA's responsibility. It must monitor and enforce compliance with the Charter by the corporation. So again, I think Honourable Mokoena asked the question, or Honourable Singh, why is it that we must first have a complaint lodged? Is it not normal responsibility of ICASA to monitor compliance with the Charter and with other provisions? So that's my first one, and obviously then did you see a board decision in that regard? Secondly, Chair, if we look at the developments thereafter, and Councillor Bhatia in fact mentioned the fact that it was quite astounding to see on the one hand legal representatives argued that they will comply, and on the other hand they heard from the executive in the SABC that they never canned any programs in any case. Now, that is an issue of compliance and abidance on the basis of the Act. But when does it affect the license conditions of the SABC? And what can ICASA do if you are issuing a public service broadcasting license to the public broadcaster? Clearly, that must also be very carefully monitored for compliance. And how will, if this is, because this is not the first time, there was the blacklisting incident as well. Commentators were blacklisted, that they cannot, and if you look at the Charter and you look at the Constitution and you look at all of that, the intention is that you have a public broadcaster that is to be held accountable to the constitutional values and the authority that's responsible for that is ICASA. To what extent can we henceforth expect you to keep them, can I say, under scrutiny, to make sure that they comply with their license conditions, because a license condition is issued on a specific basis. And then secondly, obviously, you are monitoring compliance with the charter because it's a public broadcaster. Can you please indicate what your position is henceforth? Thank you.
All right. For whatever it's worth, my 2 cents, I think, covers questions raised by, or issues highlighted by Honorable Mokoena and I think Honorable Khoza around proactive and reactive. I'm raising that ICASA because the Public Broadcasting Act, Section 8J says, the objectives of the corporation are, and J says, to establish and maintain and archives, to establish and maintain libraries and archives containing material. That's what the Act says, that the SABC must establish and maintain libraries and archives. Now, how does that reconcile with the issues raised by honorable members that says archives have been sold? Must we then understand that to mean that they contravened Section 8J of the Public Broadcasting Act? If you could answer those questions, and if there will be any second round, we will afford it to members, but if you could answer those, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honorable members. I will answer the easy questions, the part that I deal with every day, regulation making. One of the first questions is around proactive, wherein we find out for ourselves. ICASA does that. What we do on any licensee that we find that they are non-compliant, what we do, we say it's holding of their hand. We tell you, Mr. Licensee, this is what you're non-compliant with, kindly rectify it. And then there's no enforcement, and then we'll allow the person time to comply with that. Because some of the non-compliance is just basic clerical errors, and it's nothing major. Then there are instances that we are very strict on any licensee, such as the election period. We just handed out a couple of judgments against the SABC and against other licensees in the last 3 months on non-compliance around election. That one, what we do, we listen to the recording because election period is very sensitive. We hire election monitors, and then we tell them these are the things that you must look at because we have regulations that deal with that. So we are very proactive in that respect. Then other respect that we're very proactive on is the issue of local content quotas. I'll deal with that in more detail. Also, sporting of national interest and news. Those are the kind of things that when we see an error, we go and say rectify it, and then we'll write back to you, and then we'll say these are the things that you are doing wrong, rectify them because we do not want them reoccurring. So that's what we will do. On the issue of the 90% approval, the question that was asked on local content, ICASA sets the minimum. And I want to illustrate the point in the sense that ICASA was engaged on an 18-month process in coming up with the local content regulations. We went to all 9 provinces. Per province, we'll deal with at least 2 municipalities. And then we will talk to community broadcasters. There will be representation from SABC and other commercial broadcasters, be it radio or whatever. So we will do that. Then we set the local content quotas, and we'll say this is the rationale because we've looked at you, and we are the ones that look at your advertising revenue, your type of listeners that you have, which is your listeners and audiences. We'll look at that, and then we'll come with a finding. So as the authority, we set the bare minimum. We said, this is what you must do. So when the 90% came, we said from the authority side, maybe SABC had a change of heart. And because we set the minimum, because at our hearings, in our workshops, they said, this is what can happen. They can only meet this requirement because of the advertising revenue. And there was research based on that. And I cannot speak, Honorable Chair, to how the 90% was arrived at. That is a commercial decision of each and every entity, because that is their decision. Whereas we can justify the decisions that we make in arriving at the quotas that we set as the regulator. And that is how I can respond to that. And I chaired the local content regulations. The announcement came exactly a week after we made our announcement as to what are the new local content quotas that will be applicable in 24 months. So we did all those things. And then there was the thing, Honorable Singh and Honorable Van Dam, was there a need for 90%, for the 90% approval by ICASA? No, there wasn't. That's a simple response. ICASA just says, if you meet the minimum, we'll measure you on the minimum, and you just have to meet the minimum. And for us, it's a wait and see, because we're going to monitor. And I'll go to what Honorable Singh said about what, I'll use the word that we use in our space, which is format. When we come up with local content quotas, we don't dictate to a licensee how. What we do, because each and every radio station, television station is unique. So within the format that you've chosen, I'll use the example, and I'll say, because I'm from Eastern Cape, I'll use the example of Mbulaheni. So if you've chosen a specific genre of music as a licensee, and you say you'll play African contemporary music, that's what we'll measure you on. Therefore, you cannot just come out and play any music. The same with drama. So the license will specify what type of thing or program will come out, even on documentaries, and will measure you as against what is in your license. You cannot wake up and say, no, as of tomorrow, I am going to show only reality TV, because you won't be compliant with, let's say, sporting rights, your dramas. There are various factors in the license. That's why I had that in the slide. So at this point, as the authority, we cannot speak on whether it's ultra-virus or not up until we monitor. So the part about the 90%, ICASA is going to measure as against the 2006 regulations for this current period, because those are the regulations that are in place. So you will find that a licensee may exceed the quota or may not meet the local content quota. And if they do not meet the local content quota, we have, both in the license and in legislation, an exemption provision, wherein somebody, if they know upfront that they are unable to meet the quotas that are set in regulations, they advise ICASA that we won't be able to meet the local content quotas because of various reasons. Let's say there was a sport of national interest. So there are those provisions in the license and in legislation. Then I move to the question of the Honorable Koza's questions around 1 million rand. That question will be responded to by COO, because he's the one that dealt with that. But just on consequence management, as ICASA, we deal with a licensee. We don't deal with individuals. So we hold accountable the licensee, and that's the person that we deal with as the authority, because we don't have powers to deal with individual. And then whether we have received a complaint about the sale of the archives, what we did, it was in 2014 or 15, we, as the authority, we picked up in a newspaper article that there was the issue of the archives. We engaged the SABC, we engaged Multichoice. We actually did the investigation with the Competition Commission. We asked them to look at the agreement, and the results thereof will be shared by the COO because for some reason I don't have them here. So then the last, one of the other questions that was asked, why ICASA waited 3 months to institute charges? That's the question from Honorable Loliwe. What I've been advised and what I've seen even on papers is that there was various communication between the compliance unit of ICASA and the SABC staff members responsible for executing ICASA decisions. And that's what I have been informed, and that's what I have on paper. That's why it took 3 months. And as I've said earlier, for us, compliance is not having a huge rod to beat somebody else, to beat somebody. It is to make sure that the person complies with the order, and you have to make them comply with the order to the fullest and give them adequate time to comply. 3 months is a long time, but that's what happened in those 3 months. Then there was the question from Honorable Chauke on the decision-making at the SABC, which is the board, what kind of a case we have with respect to compliance. This question for us, as ICASA, we hold accountable the board. So we would, even if they have a specific person that we write to, but the person, the accounting person will be the board because the act requires that such. Even the decisions will be directed to the board. Even other decisions wherein we've made in recent weeks, months, we would say, if you are looking at the structure of a radio station, for example, that yes, it's against the SABC, but we know the most powerful person in a radio station is a station manager, and will require certain actions from a station manager because that person runs effectively, in terms of our law, runs the radio station. It's not run from head office, it will be run from the radio station, and we'll ask, that will tell the station manager to do certain actions, and those station manager will action that, and they will report to us as to the progress thereof. On the issue of the cost, may I request, Chair, that we come back on that. We don't have the actual figure at this point because it is an ongoing matter. As just to advise the committee, even this coming Friday, there is another complaint that has been lodged by the same parties before the Complaints and Compliance Committee. So it won't be an absolute figure at this point. Even if we were, it will be thumbsuck and it won't be fair on anyone. Then Honorable Killian asked if during the inquiry, which I presume is the Complaints and Compliance Committee, whether did you see any board decisions that were taken and what was the process followed with respect to other things such as the charter and the likes. At the SABC hearing, there was no evidence that was put before the SABC that was in the form of board minutes or anything of that nature. What was said was more of a, we're dealing with this decision because we need to protect children. There was no board resolution presented. There was no actual evidence to show that. Hence, we, at in the final end, we say because the decision maker at SABC is the board has to take that resolution. So we have not seen it. Then there was, there's this one about did not can any programming basis, that there was that question. From where, as the authority, we saw the email that we received from the SABC that they have not canned any programming. However, as I said, that was not presented before the SABC at when I was there, and maybe it came later on, but we are not aware of that except for the emails that we received. And then on the issue of monitoring, I want to start here by saying the monitoring of SABC by ICASA, except for the instances that I've mentioned, especially local content and sporting events and during election period. We do monitoring on an annual basis. So we choose a sample of the period that we would monitor the SABC, and then we'll go back, or any other licensee in the broadcasting space, and then we'll go back to them and ask them to comply with, rectify what has been found to be lacking in that respect. So that's what we do as the authority, because monitoring, if somebody does not actually complain, or ICASA does not pick it up in the course of by the compliance officers, monitoring is done, as I'm saying, over and over that period. So ICASA in recent years, we've only picked up we've picked up the archives, which we followed up with the SABC, with the Competition Commission and Multichoice, and we've picked up one of the regional radio stations, that I think 2 of them that were non-compliant during the last 3 years, and we dealt with those with the SABC. And we picked up recently, that one we cannot go back without having a hearing, the issues around non-compliance during elections. And as of today, we've made 5 cases between August to date. Yeah, I think I've answered your question, Chair. You'll advise on the proactive vis-a-vis reactive, the objectives, and then the archive. And I'll allow COO to go to the other matters. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to you and to the honourable members. I think just to add on to Councillor Bachi's response on the 7 days, I think it might be helpful, Chair, to just set out the timeline. So the complaint was originally lodged on the 24th of June. The decision of the SABC was issued on the 24th of June, and the SABC makes recommendations to Council. Council then ratified that recommendation on the 11th of July. And then on the 20th of July, we then got a letter from the SABC's attorneys saying that they will abide by the decision. So the letter to abide came within the 7 days, as we had prescribed. What then needed to follow was for us to confirm that indeed they will comply. And there were 2 aspects to the confirmation of the compliance. The first was that in terms of the recommendation, the chairperson of the board was directed to give ICASA a board resolution confirming that the board has taken a decision to stop the protest policy. That's the first. The second part was for us to proactively monitor the SABC to make sure that indeed, and in fact in their broadcast, that policy has been discontinued. And where we are now is the board resolution didn't come, and there were repeated engagements between us and the SABC with regard to that. And then we had to get to a point where we needed to take a stance about the disregard of that part of the decision of the authority, which is where then the details around the case, or rather the charges that have been laid, come in. So when we realize that there is, despite repeated requests and engagements, there does not appear to be any tangible proof of compliance with the order as made, Council then took a resolution that we should activate the provisions of the ICASA Act and open up a case. The nature of the case that has been laid, I would say, in line with the provisions of the Act, would be a criminal case. It is a case, I guess, of contempt with an order that's been made by a competent authority. The case was opened on the 28th of November at the SABC offices in Bramley. We got confirmation of the case number. We have had a preliminary meeting with the investigating officer who's been delegated to deal with the case, and we're supporting the SAPS in all respects in terms of the relevant information that they require to conclude the investigations. We will provide the details of the case number, Chair, and all the other related details that are required by the committee. On the matter of the SABC archives and the collaboration with the Competition Commission that Councillor Baji referred to, where we are in respect of that matter is that the matter was referred to the Commission. The Commission requested that we provide information to them in respect of our legislative mandates and in respect of the requirements that are set out for the SABC in terms of the Broadcasting Act. There were also other industry players, I think, that lodged representations with the Commission. And the Commission, having duly dealt with the representations, made a decision that the matter was a non-referral. So the Commission decided not to take it any further. And that was, I think, about 2014, 2015, thereabout. However, the decision to decide not to refer the matter might be that perhaps based on the information that was available to the Commission at the time, they didn't see any merit to prosecute the matter from their own legislative mandate. If there is additional information that's available in respect of that matter, or if there are questions that perhaps ought to have been interrogated but were not, it is something that the authority could revisit and perhaps take it up with the Commission and see if the matter cannot be dealt with differently. I think, Chair, those are the two main issues I needed to deal with. I'll let my colleagues come in as required.
You happy? Let me start. Did I understand you correctly, CFO, when you said that the matter of selling of the archives was put on hold because it was a non-referral? If that's what you said, my question still remains that the Public Broadcasting Act 8J says that the corporation, one of its objectives is to establish and to maintain libraries and archives. So I don't know that it needs a referral if the Act says go and establish and maintain. So if you could comment on that. The question that I asked was, is this in contravention of that? So it's not about whether it's referred or not. The Act is very clear, this is what you must do. And as the competent authority, we are asking you, do you think the act of disposing of the archives was in contravention of Section 8J of the Public Broadcasting Act? So just note that one down. I thought I'll start first. We'll take a second round of follow-ups and probably wrap it up thereafter. Let me start with Van Dam, go to Honorable Mathangu, Honorable Singh, Kilion, Chauke, you're noting them. And we will wrap it up there. Thank you. Honorable Van Dam.
Chair, unrelated, but related, Scila Manzi. I don't know where the assistants are. We're doing hard work. And then to ICASA, have you had any interaction with the shareholder, so the Minister of Communications? Have you communicated with her about the SABC's failure to comply? What has she said? The reason I'm asking is because in my work as a Member of Parliament, I submitted questions following our meeting. And she said that ICASA has fully complied with the ICASA ruling. SABC is now broadcasting news bulletins that covers all violent protests. So I want to know if you have had any interactions with the Minister in order to make sure that she fulfills her oversight role in ensuring that the SABC complies with an order of a constitutional body. So please just let us know about that. Thank you.
Honorable Mathangu.
Chair, thank you. Just two follow-ups. I know the first one is something that I should not be asking because it is actually the responsibility of Parliament to deal with. But when you lay a criminal charge against an entity like the SABC, because you're not dealing with individuals, who are you targeting? I mean, you can never arrest that building. Yeah, so just for clarity, because if indeed there's something wrong in law, it's something that we need to deal with. But this next question, in the response, the councillor raised the questions of compliance, and when that happened, it was like each station has its own compliance requirements. Now, there's a station, Lotus, which is a station that plays Indian music. And I have received, through media, a lot of complaints that that station is actually suffering as a result of the decision. Have you received that complaint? If yes, how have you dealt with that query? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, sir. Could we have Honourable Singh?
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, just on Lotus, the claim is that there just is not enough local content, suitable local content available to meet the 90-10 criteria. That's why earlier on I spoke about the one-size-fits-all. So I'm not surprised you're getting lots of complaints. But my question, Chair, is that ICASA has to deal with all radio stations, television, broadcasters, etc. Has the fact that SABC has just one board member standing, or does that impede on your dealings with the SABC in terms of getting decisions or answers or any queries answered by them? And if so, in what way? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Honourable Killian.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, I'm happy that Councillor Bhatia, in fact, informed us about the decision and how they make those the public consultation that precedes the local content matter, determination of regulations, etc. It takes a period of 24 months, etc. But just as far as that is concerned, I think some of the members have highlighted some of the problems, practical problems. Secondly, we now understand that you have not seen any resolution by the board on that decision. And then thirdly, I just wanted to have clarity. So it means that Section 5B of the Act, of the Broadcasting Act, was not complied with. In other words, any deviation or changes or amendments to policies must in fact be submitted to the authority. Have you received any such amended policies in the past 2 years from the SABC? And in specific regard to the news content, you know, the approach that they had with regards to non-viewing, non-broadcasting of violent protests, etc., and also as far as the local content policy is concerned, you have not received any confirmation in writing from the SABC. Can we just have that in confirmation? Chair, then just lastly, if supplementing the question that you posed with regards to the archives, you see, the Broadcasting Act is very clear about the authority's responsibility to enforce compliance with the Charter by the corporation. And the issue of the archives is also a component of the Charter. So the objectives of the corporation must be enforced, and there's no other institution but ICASA to assist with such compliance. Thank you, Chair.
Honourable Chauke, and just before you start, Honourable Chauke, can I just say this to all members? We are transcribing, so please try and speak into the mic because it's going to have an impact on the quality of the transcripts, and I shouldn't be saying this, but no cell phones should be on or even on silent, because that also affects the quality of the transcripts. Honorable Chauke?
No, my point, Chair, it's more about authority, accountability, and whom do you hold accountable. And I thought that in your presentation, you'll be able to share with us the frustrations that led you to open the case around the issue of authority. And I think colleagues have already touched the issue of the board, non-existence of the board, or one man in the board. I thought you'll share your views with this committee, because if you have now gone to an extent of opening a criminal case, and my question of yours earlier was that we wanted the detail of that criminal case. A criminal, who's going to be held criminal? And again, you're not specific when you talk to us. You talk more about, we're meeting with the SABC, we're meeting the SABC, but you're not being specific to us. I thought that at some point you'll be able to tell us, who is this person that you are talking to at SABC? Because you cannot speak parables. Just be specific so that we understand that your engagement as ICASA with SABC is at this level. And the question of yours that comes is that person has authority. The issue of legal, I mean, you said when you started with the process, you received a letter from the lawyer representing the SABC, and maybe part of it will be a question here, but maybe a question later when we engage with the SABC of the decision taken to appoint such a legal person to represent or to write on behalf of SABC on such matters. So just be specific with us, who's going to be liable here on the criminal case. If you can just share with us that particular authority, we'll definitely be happy from our side so as to ascertain this authority that I'm talking about. Accountability lies with the board of SABC. And therefore, whatever action that you take, the respondent is supposed to be the SABC board as the authority. Maybe you can share with us your experience and what is it that we have opened.
Can I check with members if anybody else wants to have a second bite? Because after this, we shall conclude this matter. No? All right. Can we hand over to ICASA?
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll start first with just clarifying the response that I provided earlier around the archives, and Councillor Pachi and colleagues will deal with the other questions. When the matter of the archives first arose and when it was first tabled with us, it was tabled with us from two perspectives. The one angle was that it was an exclusive arrangement between, or rather the one allegation was that it was an exclusive arrangement between the SABC and whoever the party to the transaction was, and as a result, it was anti-competitive. That was the one leg. The second leg was, even if it was not competitive, the agreement in itself constituted a merger and therefore ought to be subject to competition authority approvals. And that's how we considered it. And based on our concurrent mandate with the Competition Commission on matters relating to competition in the sector, we then evaluated the representations that were made to us and then made representations to the Commission, and the Commission then made its finding based on those two aspects. So the other additional aspect in relation to the Broadcasting Act is not something that, as far as I can recall, was pronounced on.
Sir, I know it was not something that was pronounced on. I'm sorry to be difficult, but there is no other authority that we can go to. We want you to pronounce on it. Is it in conflict with the objectives as per the Act, or is it not? It's just that question. Whether you pronounced on it or not is really something that we've now already received. Because, let me explain why we are being so specific. Remember, this ad hoc committee's mandate is to ascertain whether the board complied with its fiduciary duties. All these other things are important. But if the board can't carry out that is expected of it and that it signed for in its shareholder compact or in the act, then it gives us a clear direction of whether they were carrying out or failed to carry out. So the question really is, there's an act, you are the body that is expected to monitor compliance with that act. There was a transaction. Does that transaction, in your view, add to non-compliance with the act? If you can't answer it, then you say you don't have a view on it. But that's really the question we're asking on that one. Could respond to that and all the other ones, as specific as that, because that is really what we're about. We're not going to let you off the hook without satisfying us that we are competent enough to write a report that we will defend in the face of all sorts of criticism that we are anticipating will come to this committee. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairperson. That, for me, the response is simple. At the time we looked at the agreement, that was not the issue. However, having looked at the objective of the Broadcasting Act, which we've just quoted, Section 8J, we do not have any proof at this point which we can look at whether the SABC is failing to maintain or an archive. Because at this point, I am not in a position to say whether they have failed to do that. That is my honest opinion. All right. And then just to go back to the questions that were asked, especially by Honorable Member Van Dam, saying the issue of the shareholder, which is the minister, whether we engaged with the minister as a CASA. As the shareholder, the only thing that we did with respect to the minister, we sent her a copy of the judgment, and because the person is there is a minister who is a shareholder, then they will engage on compliance in that respect. The shareholder is not a licensee before ICASA. That's one. Secondly, you would actually can imagine if as a regulator will start engaging with shareholders that at some level or the other we also report to might become a bit problematic. So we would like to always maintain our independence, and we ensure that we engage with licensees directly. So in a nutshell, we have not engaged the minister or the shareholder, as it were. And then there were a number of questions around Lotus FM. We've heard what is happening on the radio and on newspapers. We have not received complaints around Lotus FM. However, let me contextualize Lotus FM. Lotus FM, there are public reports by ICASA. There have been one licensee amongst the SABC stable that have been non-compliant. You see, the beauty about local content, which is I want to contextualize because I know when people report in media, they report other things. Local content, you choose the format. They have chosen a format, and we hold you to account to that format. So the fact that there is a shortage of South African Indian music, we allow a licensee, we say to the licensee, go out, have a show, seek South African music that is relevant to your format. We're not going to tell you how you do it. You can do it via live shows or whatever. And if you are not satisfied with the local content, because it is a radio station within South Africa, it has to play South African music, and it has to be proactive in that regard in terms of South African Indian music. And we've been engaging with Lotus FM as in my spaces as the councillor responsible, amongst others, for local content issues. For the past 2 years, we said comply. I'm not going to speak about the music that is currently played on Lotus FM, but they've had their own challenges that they still needed to comply with their own format. So on the issue of 9010, we have read what, especially, I mean, it's one of the main radio stations that there have been complaints about in the media. The same with Metro FM, the same with 5FM, because of how they are placed commercially. And we, as I'm saying, we've had our issues with Lotus, and they are in the public domain. And then there's the question around resolutions by Honorable Killian, especially Section 5B, with respect to the policies, especially editorial, non-viewing of I say, violence and the likes, and local content specifically. Those policies, as far as the CASA is concerned, this has, especially on local content, the 9010, we don't have that, and there's no requirement to place those before the authority. We only monitor at the end, at the basis of the minimum. On the violent, on not showing certain content around the SABC, we deal with those at non-compliance level, where in the licensee, we see that it's not adhering to the ideals of the Constitution of South Africa and its license and the Broadcasting Act. Then we'll deal with that. We have, and I want to say this, we have, as the authority, received the editorial policy and some other policies, which I said, especially the editorial policy, is subject to a CCC inquiry, not even an inquiry, complaint, which will be heard on Friday. So that will be decided on a Friday. Then there was a question on enforcement of compliance with the charter by CASA, because we don't only look at one, we look at a number of things. We look at non-compliance amongst the instruments of the SABC, one being the charter. We look at those and we engage and we tell them if there are areas of non-compliance. But as far as I know, there hasn't been issues on the charter insofar as the SABC. Then the other question by Honorable Chauke was, who do we hold accountable, seeing that there is no board? And this was linked to the legal question. SABC has appointed representatives and regulatory specialists, and in some instances, like any other licensee, they are not unique. They'll have regulatory specialists, head of regulatory, head of legal, head of programming, also lawyers. So what we do on the line of communication, depending what is the matter at hand, we will write to the relevant person. So that person then would advise as to if they don't have, in some instances the person will say, no, that issue is no longer with me, it's headed by somebody else. So they have those, and they would list those in terms of our license. And then it says, how do we deal since there is no board? SABC, as I said, they have contact people in their license, and we deal with those people directly, but we say to them, this is directed to your board in this, and because the board members, in any case, they are not executive, so we'll deal with those. Then the detailed criminal case, as in any case, you have to cite individuals. So at CASA, because you are dealing with, we're trying to separate roles. The COO, Mr. Wellington Gwepe, on behalf of the authority, we signed a resolution that he must lodge the criminal case against the SABC, citing the current, when I say current, terms of legislation, which is the SABC board chair and the group's chief executive officer or any person in that capacity. So that's how we would lodge the complaint, because those are the people that are accountable in law. So we'll lodge it in that manner. So that's how we'll deal with it. And I'm not sure whether I have. Oh, and then the case number from SABS. It's in Bramley, and the reference number is CAS, which is C. This is Charlie, Alpha, Sugar, something like that, and 534/11/2016. It was at Bramley, but it has since been transferred to Brixton Police Station. And then at Brixton Police Station, the reference number is CAS 519/11/2016. Then there's a contact number. Why I'm making this distinction between the two case numbers, SABS has an online system, computerized system. One of the case numbers, you can be able to see it from a provincial basis. The one you can be able to see it at a national basis. And it depends which police station you're at. That's why I'm giving both numbers, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for participating. We will of course, take from your evidence that we think is necessary and required for our investigation. I should have said this to the AG's office. In light of the developments this morning, there might be just a need for some sort of accommodation. We're not sure what this morning meant, bearing in mind that we had extended an invitation to the board, and you are presenting here. So I'm just saying that thank you very much. We will try not to call you because it was not your fault, but there might be that need at some point, but we will keep it to the minimum. So thank you very much. Oh, okay. Yes?
Chair, you know, there's just something that bothers me a bit. I'm not sure if ICASA does have sufficient institutional capacity to carry out its mandate. I'm just a little concerned about the kinds of responses we're getting in terms of what they are doing. It looks like to me the real power that they have is obviously being the licensing authority, and obviously one of the biggest weapons. Obviously, I'm not saying it's wrong for you to go and lay a case with the SAPS or something like that. But if you really want it to be effective, you've got to hit where it matters, so that you encourage compliance. Otherwise, it just becomes another thing. The thing that bothers me most is around this issue of archives. I'm not so satisfied with the responses we got. Because you are saying you did take an initiative, but I'm not sure where did that initiative take you to. It doesn't seem conclusive to me. It's kind of hanging, and to me it's a major thing. If you are going to be an independent authority that is there to regulate the broadcasting in the public interest, the archives are actually key to that, because we are building a heritage for this country, and we need to be able, we are not a commercial, we are not a commercial entity. We are there as well to educate the public. We are there to engender a particular psyche in our own society. And that to me is worrying, honestly. And I'm hoping that maybe you are going to reflect, and probably it's something that Van Dam's committee will have to look at, but it does concern me greatly.
No.
You see, honorable members, I know that there are more questions than answers that maybe have cropped up. I really thought this was information gathering to empower us to write a report more than an inquiry against ICASA per se. So I just want that balance, that they're really not coming to account to us. We had asked them to come and talk to us. We have no obligation to consider any of this evidence that they're giving us as a matter of fact, because it was really just about empowerment. So I just want us to maintain that line of getting information to empower us to write our report as opposed to putting them on the spot. But I'm not saying you shouldn't be on the spot where members think that you could have added more value to us. So I'm really going to be a bit strict when it gets to that. Can we then take Honorable Mokoena, Honorable Van Dam? Did you want to say something, Honorable Mike? No. Honorable Chauke, and then Killian will be the last. But could we maintain that line, please? Mokoena?
Thanks, Chair. No, the reason why I think this line of questioning is now becoming important is because I think and it's not the first time that this has happened. And I think it then informs what happens with these entities like the SABC and others that fall within that telecommunications and communications sectors. The reason why I'm raising this is because my question was not answered, because I asked, there was an article in the papers citing a member of the board whom I believe we're going to interview in this process, who said that the SABC board had taken a decision, whether unilateral, I don't know what the constitution of the board was at the time, but a decision was taken not to broadcast certain political parties during the elections of 2014 and then to a certain extent in 2016. The answer that I got was that no, generally this is what we do. I didn't get a direct answer as to, did you get a complaint about this, one, and two, if you did not get a complaint, did you hear of such an allegation? And three, what then did you do about it? I think those are some of the issues. The issues of the toothlessness of ICASA, I think we can deal with those. I think, ICASA is a discussion on its own. Thanks very much.
Honorable Van Dam?
Thanks, Chair. This is an information gathering question. So the matter we discussed at the committee was whether ICASA has systems in place to monitor whether or not its decisions are being complied with. Now, are the systems now in place? And after you've now laid the charges, will you still be able to monitor whether or not they're complying with your order? So how are you getting what I'm saying? Are there measures in place in order to comply whether or not the SABC has complied with your order? And now that you've laid the charges, will you be able to check after that whether or not they're still complying? How are you doing it? How are you practically doing it?
Honorable Chauke?
My point, Chair, really without taking you backward, Chair, the point raised by Honorable Makosi Khoza, it's a point that we can't just leave a passing, Chair. It has not been properly responded to on the issue of the archive. It has not been responded to. Therefore, Chair, for this ad hoc committee, we'll have to initiate further processing of this particular item. One of that, we may, because there's an end receiver of the product, who happen to be Multichoice, we may want, in our assessment of the engagement as we move forward, to invite Multichoice. I think it will be very important because as we speak now, That archive is lying at Multichoice. It will be important that we invite them just to get to know the transition that led to them having to have this a heritage of our country and of our public broadcaster. I think there's a need to do that. But just to confirm as you close, Chair, it must be clear that ICASA has laid a criminal case against the chairperson of the board, Professor Maghuve, and the CEO. So it's clear, it must be clear. We have to understand this thing. We bypass, we like scared, we're not sure. Do we open against him? Or we want to hear. The colleague here asked the question. We have opened a case against who, not the building. And when you say it, you're saying it as if there's something that is holding a neck. You're not sure exactly. Say it so that we know. You have opened a criminal case against who? So that it's on record, then we know. You see, that's what we must do, Chair. This exercise is not the exercise to babysit or to be smiling and eating muffins here. We have to find facts. You must give us facts. So that's the reason that we're engaging.
Why Vulalento? This guy was very polite until now. I blame you for him being not polite anymore. Killian, you're going to be the very last one.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, yes, I listened very carefully to the response by Councillor Bati. In as far as the policies of the SABC are concerned and what needs to be done and the responsibility of ICASA. And I cannot but somehow express the same sentiments as Honourable Khoza, and that is to say that concern is there that in order to ensure compliance with the license conditions and with the Broadcasting Act, specifically the charter of the corporation, it is important that the ICASA is aware of what the policies are and what those amendments are. So clearly, if you interpret Section 6(5) of the Broadcasting Act, then there is a responsibility that ICASA must just keep the record of the public broadcaster to say, this is the news policy, this is the editorial policy, this is the local content policy, etc. And otherwise, how do you monitor compliance? So I can't see how ICASA can say that it is not a requirement. It is a requirement that the SABC must submit any deviations and changes on policy within reasonable time. Now, clearly, if we've had that in the middle of the year, by now it could have been reasonable time to have expected that you would have received it. You see, this is to ensure that we have corporations and institutions, not individual fiefdoms. And that is our concern. Our concern as members of Parliament is that for too long we've seen the personification of public entities built around individuals and not around procedures and processes and proper systems. And that's what we want to do as members of Parliament. We want to ensure that the acts are in fact complied with. Why do we go in so much detail to write legislation if people just write roughshod over the details of legislation? Is ICASA aware of their responsibilities in terms of the Broadcasting Act? Thank you, Chair.
Can I humbly request that you attempt to respond to these things in 10 minutes, otherwise we're going to have a domino effect with future, or not with future, with the next witnesses. Can I hand over to you, ma'am?
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with the question that was asked by Honourable Chauke on the who did we charge. And I premised my response earlier by saying, because the Broadcasting Act mentions positions, that's what we did. We said we are doing charging the chairperson, alternative the chief executive officer of the SABC with the offence of failing to comply with a decision made by the authority in terms of Section 17E of the ICASA Act 13 of 2000. And that is a simple response from our side. And Chair, I'm saying this once again, I know earlier Honourable Chauke asked the question about actual names, and we did say that we do not want to infringe on any individual's rights. However, should the the committee insists that they want the files that we have as ICASA will make those available to the committee, but we do not want to infringe on individual rights. That's what I premised my response on earlier. And then, Chair, I must go back to the question of the archives, and I'll start off by saying that when ICASA dealt with the matter, and unfortunately, because we only came here to deal with the triple CBET, it was a factual finding. It was not based on, we did not choose where we were going to look at, except to say these were the two issues that were raised, even in the media, even other people that wrote to the authority, even what the authority saw, that the contract or the agreement as it stood had possible exclusivity, had matters around competition concerns, and that's how we looked at it at the time. Should there be, at this point, a concern with respect, that's why I said we never looked at, and I was honest with the committee, we never looked at maintaining and establishing the archives. That was my response when I responded, because we looked at it from a pure competition concern, that it was based on an exclusivity, and there were concerns around ETV saying, if we want the content, how are we going to get it? So that was the gist of what was happening. Then Honorable Mokoena asked, saying that a member of the board said that a decision was taken by the SABC not to show any other political parties within the SABC. This, I'll be honest, we're not aware of. However, what I will say by that specific board member, which I do not know, what I know is that when we're doing the election broadcast regulations, there were concerns that were cited by political parties, other various ones, that they are not being shown on TV, hence we did the political election broadcast slots. So that is what we did. And if we had received a complaint as such from the SABC former, and I assume it's a former board member, then the ICASA would have dealt with that. So we dealt with the issue of representation during election, and there were concerns that were raised during our workshops that we did on a national basis on the political election broadcast, and that's what we did. And the next question was that I'll respond to from Honorable Killian on especially Section 6.5. Maybe it's how I'm responding to the question. ICASA has a responsibility towards certain policies of the SABC that are mentioned in law, such as the commissioning protocol, such as the editorial policy. And editorial policy is quite detailed, and those are required to be lodged with the authority, and the authority will look at those and advise SABC whether they are compliant or non-compliant. The issue, I know it keeps being said, is that, for instance, there will be the local content policy. It's not written down, no one has seen it, because there's the ICASA regulations, there's the ICASA license that we measure people against, and those are the two things that you need for us to be able to say whether you're compliant or non-compliant. The fact that you decide that you're going to show 100% local content, well and good for you, but as the authority, we're going to measure you as against what we've approved. So, I mean, even I'll make the issue of the censorship policy. No one has, even the affidavits that have been put before the Constitutional Court, there's no one that has shown us that this is the policy, but everyone is referring it, with due respect, say, as a policy. It's a statement by certain, I agree, by certain individuals, but ICASA cannot base on words of individuals. So even when the policy came, for instance, the censorship policy, it was justified. As I said earlier, no evidence was put before us as to the censorship policy, although it's being referred to as a policy, but you don't see it on paper. And I'm sorry, Chair, it's of concern to ICASA. It's of concern that we're held as an institution to things that people say. And yes, we'll look at those, and someone is going to appear before us, and the person will justify. The editorial policy is a straightforward one. It's a legal, physical document that has come before us. But in some instances, there's none. With due respect, that's what I wanted to say to the committee. And I will allow the CEO to respond to the question of the systems in place in order to ensure compliance, because that is an operational matter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I think without maybe delving too much into the matter, just to comment briefly on the issue that Honourable Mukwena raised on the Jewish Council. I think the one thing that I've learned since I joined the organization is that if there's one thing we do well, it is the monitoring of broadcasters during the election period. So even if there was such a complaint, and indeed we didn't, there was such an issue raised and we were not aware of it. One of the things
we thank you for availing yourself. Make one small, humble request that you go back and apply your mind, because you can see that this matter is very central to committee members. The impact of the sale, transaction, whatever you call it, of the archives vis-a-vis Section 8J. We will ask, I heard that you had lawyers in your delegation. So could we get from your side a legal opinion? We'll obviously test it with other legal opinions. We just want to know from you, in light of what has been brought to your attention today, what is your view in terms of Section 8J? And if that could reach our offices by Wednesday next week. Please send us your comments through to the company secretary Wednesday next week. What are your views on it? Go and apply your mind, and we'll share that with members, because I think that will be central to some of our business. I want to thank you very much for your participation. And
there were matters that they referred to, but they couldn't disclose, and they were willing to make those documents available. I thought it's important that we get those documents. Thank you.
Okay. I hadn't had an indication to that effect. What we will do after this is that we will check with members for these documents that clearly you were not prepared, not prepared, but you hadn't brought in anticipation, and we'll send you a letter saying, please, could you make these documents available for committee perusal. But that, as soon as we've got an indication from members which documents they are exactly, we will make that request to you. Is that okay? Thank you. Let's then close this section. It is just past 4:45. At 4 o'clock, we will commence with the hearings, and we would have the public protector talk to the report where ethics fails, and we'll proceed from there. So you've got about a 5-minute comfort break, and can we be here at 4 o'clock? Because after the public protector, we still have one more witness. Thank you.